for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson, and I'm your co-host.
And I'm Katy Steele. I'm filling in for Jack Prince.
Good morning. As we're recording on Friday, September 11th, 2020. Today is the 19th anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Towers, the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and the plane that was crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, that was hijacked. You know what I remember the most about 9/11 was the fact that we lied about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq so that we can invade them.
Yep, and I keep remembering the aftermath and how we eventually all learned that, you know, they grounded every plane in the U.S. until, they had to get the Saudis out of here.
They had to get bin Laden's relatives out.
Yep.
By the way, did you see that bin Laden's niece is supporting Donald Trump? No, that was a story that was just on the internet about a week or two ago. I forget what news source it is. I can look it up here real quick.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. I'm like, well, it's not a surprise, you know. Yeah, one despot supporting another one. Yeah, it's, Daily Mail. Osama bin Laden's niece writes letter to America. It's an open letter saying that America needs to keep Donald Trump at the helm to restore prosperity and liberty. Puke.
Ralph.
Yeah. Do I need to get the puke sound effect going again this week?
I think we've all been puking in our mouths every time we've turned on the media.
Yeah, I think we have to do it today. Yeah, we used this a lot last week in describing the possibility of Sarah Huckabee Sanders and
come on, don't bring that visual back.
And Kim Jong-un hooking up.
I was just gonna bring up that weirdo too.
Which weirdo?
Kim Jong-un.
Oh, I thought maybe you were talking about Sarah Sanders.
Oh, no, the people that Trump respects, actually, is who I was referring to.
Oh, God. Well, I tell you what, we've got quite a bit to talk about today. We want to talk about the wildfires out west, and for that matter, all around the world. The whole world is burning, literally. And the only one that I hear talking about it as being attributed to climate change is Al Roker at NBC News.
Yeah.
That's it.
I do know that a lot of the mutual investment funds are focusing on stuff like, you know, air pollution masks and stuff like that. But don't worry, guys, it's all being manufactured overseas, so there won't be enough for you.
Exactly. And then we, of course, have to talk about the bombshell in Bob Woodward's new book that's coming out that Trump has basically been lying to the American public about the severity of the coronavirus. We'll get to those stories and much more in just a minute here. Before we get started, a couple of reminders that you can follow us on social media. You can go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can join us at Tumblr, southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com. Do a search for Southpaws there. We're on Apple Podcasts. Do a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our podcast to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts. If you're listening at YouTube or subscribing there, go to youtube.com, do a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and Global Community Radio Channel 1. We're on every Saturday night at 11 p.m. on Global Community Radio, so make sure you check us out there. All right, I want to get to this update. This kind of ties into a story that we've been talking about on this show since early 2017. Now, I don't think we've talked about this particular deputy. We might have. I don't remember. But I want to get to this story. Ken Kolker writes this for Wood Television.
Oh, thanks, Ken. I like that guy.
Mm-hmm. The guy that's been covering the PFAS debacle in this area from day one.
Yeah, one of the few reporters that does cover the things that you see nobody else wants to touch with a 12-foot pole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wish he'd get back to me on the PFAS that my neighbor's putting in the ground with the crops. Human waste, human feces that's teeming with bacteria, hormones, PFAS, heavy metals, chemicals,
just the stuff they're spraying all over your food before you get it.
Yeah. So Ken writes this. A Kent County Sheriff's deputy who recently resigned had lied about his involvement in an off-duty hit-and-run crash, quote, just to see if I could get away with it, end of quote. That is according to a police report obtained by Target 8. Now, for those of you not in the Grand Rapids area, Target 8 is the investigative arm of Wood Television. They're the ones that cover the PFAS. They're
Wood
the ones that cover the corruption.
Is the propaganda arm of the Grand Rapids media. Just to clarify.
Yeah, our media partners, which Heather Walker really pushed back on. I tell you who I love at Wood TV. Henry Yerb. I'll just say it on air. Henry Yerb was a fill-in instructor of mine at Grand Valley.
Okay.
So I've known Henry for well over 30 years. Ken Kolker was a fantastic investigative reporter at the Grand Rapids Press. Then when MLive
had much less freedom since
cut all the jobs there because newspapers are literally dying across this country, so Ken went to Channel 8. Heather Walker, Lindsay McColmel, they also do fantastic work with Target 8. Susan Samples as well. But continuing this story, Kenyatta Weaver Jr. resigned in August about a month after the crash on Grand Rapids Southeast side.
I'm sorry, I just have to interrupt and say,
yes,
for perspective while you're listening, the officer that was accused in this situation is black. So you should kind of know that going in. There's a big picture of him on the article. So okay, go ahead.
By the way, he was working for the Sheriff's Department under a last chance agreement. He was involved in an off-duty brawl in 2019 at a trailer park on the south end of Grand Rapids. There's video of this. There's video of him pulling his gun during this fight, and he lied about it.
Sounds like a cop.
So instead of firing him, they said, okay, one more chance. You screw up again, you're gone. So in the most recent case, a witness who paints road markings told Grand Rapids police that he was working at about 12:30 a.m. July 23rd when he saw a car flying at speeds he estimated at more than 100 miles per hour south on Jefferson Avenue Southeast.
100 miles per hour on Jefferson? What's the speed limit there, 25?
25 or 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, again, this is according to a police report obtained by Target 8 through the Freedom of Information Act. The witness told police he called 911 after watching the car hit the railroad tracks near Cottage Grove Street, strike a curb, and lose control. The driver tried to restart the car, the witness said, then ran away, leaving the vehicle behind. When questioned by police about his abandoned car, Weaver denied any involvement. He told police he'd parked on the street outside his home the night before. He had been drinking at home until he went and passed out. That's a direct quote.
Sounds a lot like a cop.
Said he went to bed by 11 p.m., 90 minutes before the crash. He said he thought he parked his car in front of a fire hydrant and that it had been impounded by police. He then later told the cops that someone else had driven it, but he did not want to press charges or identify the person who had been driving it. Again, that's according to the police report the Target 8 got through the Freedom of Information Act.
Since he's a cop, it's okay for him to just decide not to press charges.
Quote, I did not want to get the person in trouble, end of quote. But then he later identified 3 people he suspected of taking his car. So Weaver apparently left his cell phone in the car. Grand Rapids police got a search warrant.
Classy and brilliant.
For it. They said that they found text messages on the phone that appeared to contradict his account that he was in bed by 11 p.m., including a text that he had sent 7 minutes after the crash was reported. On August 20th, a week after he resigned as a deputy, Weaver went to the Grand Rapids police to come clean. Through his attorney, Josh Kuiper, he said he didn't want to talk about alcohol use, according to the report. So
he
I'm
doesn't
going
want to talk about alcohol use. Oh.
So I'm going to stop there, because if the name Josh Kuiper rings any bells with our listeners, we'll play this. Josh Kuiper was involved in a scandal involving the Grand Rapids Police Department. Let's play the audio from that night from a recorded phone line at the Grand Rapids Police Department that they thought was unrecorded. Let's take a listen.
You gotta put 3407 in your cell phone now.
I shall do that.
As the number to call.
It's a non-tape line. What do you got?
I gotcha. Josh Kuiper from the prosecutor's office, wrong way, visibly intox, says he's intox. As I approach, driving the wrong way and schmucked a parked car. There was a guy getting into the car at the time who got knocked to the ground. Not sure on injuries at this point.
And actually, I'm going to stop it there for a quick second, because the night that this accident happened was the night that Kuiper was at a party for the retirement of the Kent County prosecutor. Left the party drunk, got in a wreck.
Which Kent County prosecutor was this? Was it?
It's oh god,
it's not
I can't.
Forsyth, right?
Yeah, so
it was
Forsyth.
Oh wow, you can't make this stuff up.
Yep, he was at Bill Forsyth's retirement party. This was before Forsyth was named the special investigator for the Michigan State University Larry Nassar scandal. So Kuiper's at this party, is allegedly drunk. We don't know for sure because he wasn't given a breathalyzer and he wasn't taken to jail for a blood test.
But you'll hear all about that.
Exactly. Let's continue the tape here. Again, this is a Grand Rapids police officer on scene talking to the watch commander on a line they thought was unrecorded.
Watching this is on ICV and body cam.
I didn't recognize him at first, and he's like, oh, man, I'm really sorry. I was going the wrong way. I'm Josh. I'm from the prosecutor's office, so plenty of that.
How much of it was on body cam? That's what the watch commander asked. Yes, pretty much the first thing. Let's continue here.
It's all on there?
Yeah.
Sobrieties, how's he going to do?
Probably not amazing.
PDT?
Nope, he's just standing on the curb right now, away from me.
Who else is there?
Just some other people on the street, and some firefighters, just me.
Can we do sobrieties and go from there? And
Yeah, I can do that.
Let's pass them. If we can. If we can't, we can't, Adam. We're not going to get...
No, I get it. Yeah.
I'd like to pass them on sobriety if we could.
All right, I'll do what I can.
All right, call me back in 07.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, there we go, folks.
Call me back on the unrecorded line.
So that was the Grand Rapids Police basically covering for the fact that this now former prosecuting attorney is now a defense attorney, was drunk driving the wrong way down a one-way street, hit a parked car, and injured somebody.
Yeah, incredibly similar to the, driving drunk and leaving the scene.
Kuiper resigned over this, by the way, and ended up spending, I believe, he spent a night in jail.
Ooh, a whole night?
Yeah, they considered it 2 days because he went in Friday night, he got out Saturday morning.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was 2 days in jail that he was sentenced to.
You sat on that bench in the little...
Yeah.
waiting area.
Yeah. So right there it is. We don't even need to read any more of this. So right there is what happens.
Yep.
There's a different set of rules for everybody else. Then there's a different set of rules for people who are in the criminal justice system.
And notice how the officers involved in arresting or pulling over the prosecuting attorney employee, the prosecutor's employee, they gave him more privilege. They gave him more leniency and more of their discretion than they gave to their fellow officer. Now, what was the difference between the two? The guy in the prosecutor's office is white. Their fellow officer is black. I can't help but notice those two glaring differences. And aside from the fact that who has power?
Yep.
The white guy in the prosecutor's office. So they cater to power.
Yeah. Well, that's why he got Kuiper as his attorney.
Yep.
Because right there it is.
He's like, this guy's got real life experience.
And by the way, we'll follow the Kenyatta Weaver. We'll see what happens because he still has to be prosecuted for this latest incident with the car wreck and everything else.
I wonder why the union doesn't go to bat for the black cops like they do for the white ones. I don't know why nobody ever calls them out on it.
I think they did, and that's how he ended up getting a last chance agreement.
Sorry,
I've been under a last chance agreement with the U.S. Postal Service. Sorry, been there, done that.
Well, I believe
you violate that, you're done, and there's no saving you. The union can't do anything for you at that point. If you agree to it voluntarily, if you mess up again, you're done, and the union can't do a thing about it.
Still, they throw themselves out there in front of the bus, and at least they've got articles coming out, and they're disagreeing with everything you do to a white cop. I don't see him doing that for this guy.
Well, apparently he's been in trouble before, prior to this big brawl that he was involved in. But you make a valid point.
They're all always
had this
previous.
cop been white, what kind of punishment, in quotation marks, air quotation you can see, Katie, what would he get versus what an African-American officer would get?
And how long before these guys start to notice? There was a guy in Kalamazoo recently that was just fired from the police department. I haven't seen a picture of him. I don't know him personally. I know his first name is Amir, and I'm pretty sure he is not a white man.
I would assume
my first reaction was, how'd this guy get fired? How bad is he? He must be horrible, And then I started looking into it, and I'm like, oh, he's not white. So it's possible maybe he got fired for, trying to do the right thing.
That's and of course that's how it works.
Yep. You can't be a good cop. They won't let you stay.
No, they won't. They'll find one way or another to get rid of you. Mm-hmm. Just ask Serpico, because they tried to kill him.
Ugh.
Really, people need to start watching movies, because especially the stuff that's based on real life. Serpico is one. All the President's Men is another. But that is fantastic. And we'll talk a little bit about All the President's Men here a little bit later. Right now, I want to get to what's happening with the environment and all the fires out west. Right now, California has the worst fire ever recorded, plus the third worst fire ever recorded, plus the fourth worst fire ever recorded.
If you haven't seen the statements by the firefighters over there, like the old guys, that have been lifers, it's terrifying. Like, they've never seen anything like it. They have no idea what to do right now. Like, they're completely unprepared. There's not enough firefighters.
No.
And every fire that keeps burning is just contributing to bigger holes in the atmosphere that are going to keep the climate change, exponentially increasing.
And the only person that is attributing any of this to climate change that I've been seeing anywhere in the national mainstream corporate media is Al Roker over on the Today Show.
Yeah.
He's the only one. You don't hear it locally here. The chief climate denier, Bill Steffen, over at Wood TV, he believes it's a hoax. He's told me this.
There was a story in the Washington Post yesterday about a bipartisan agreement referring to the hydrofluorocarbons, I think is what they're called, that are usually manufactured in refrigerators and air conditioners and such.
Yeah.
They're basically, and this, as I started to think about it, kind of scares me because that's what they're going to eliminate, are air conditioners and refrigerators and stuff like that, right? Because they're going to have to be like using less of these chemicals per this agreement.
Well, here's the thing. Back in the good old days, good old days in quotation marks, they used to have a refrigerant called R12. They used it in refrigerators. They used it in automobiles. That was heavy, in hydrofluorocarbons.
Okay.
It was
that was the one that was originally banned.
Bad stuff for the environment. So then they came up with R134A, which is supposed to be less damaging to the environment. So, yeah.
So now, but that's what scares me is that they're going, okay, instead of going after natural gas companies or, going after any of these people, the fossil fuel companies that are really on a massive level contributing to climate change, they're going, okay, we got to make less air conditioners. What's that going to do? It's going to kill poor people.
It absolutely is. Instead of going after, for example, couples that are having gender reveal parties that set off these fires.
Let's make less air conditioners.
I have this. This is the New York Times. This is a collection of stories. As wildfires raged up and down the West Coast on Thursday, officials in Oregon said that one of the most destructive fires, which incinerated whole neighborhoods in 2 towns, may have been deliberately set.
Oh, deliberately set. That's great.
3 law enforcement agencies in Oregon, including the Ashland Police Department and the Oregon State Police, said they had opened an investigation for arson for the Alameda fire, which has been linked to at least 2 deaths, has destroyed roughly 600 homes in the towns of Talent and Phoenix. Charred residential streets in those communities now resemble moonscapes, and the fire was still raging out of control Thursday. With firefighters struggling to contain the blazes, rescue workers made early forays into towns that had been blackened and hollowed out by fires. By Thursday evening, they had discovered at least 15 bodies, and hundreds of homes had been consumed by flames. Bobby Doan, spokeswoman for the Oregon Office of Emergency Management, said about 500,000 people in the state had been subject to evacuation orders. Can you imagine that? 500,000 people
Where do they
displaced.
Go? If the roads are burning, what do you do?
And you can't really open up these centers because we're still in a pandemic.
Yeah, that too.
Governor Kate Brown of Oregon said this, quote, "We have never seen this amount of uncontained fire across our state," end of quote. By the way, 900,000 acres of land has burned in Oregon. Resources have been stretched thin as firefighters from Washington and Oregon that had been deployed to California were sent back home to fight blazes in their own backyards. As California continued to burn with more than 3 million acres scorched, a record in modern history, fire crews were being rushed in from Utah, Colorado, and Texas. The August complex fire, sparked by a storm of lightning strikes last month, on Thursday became the largest fire in California history, having burned nearly 740 square miles. Wow.
Oh, wow.
And Washington State has had nearly 500,000 acres burn as well. So this is just horrible.
It's devastating, exponentially devastating to ecosystems, to air quality, to, housing, infrastructure. I can't even imagine how many issues.
They also further in the article mentioned the Bear Fire northeast of Oroville, California, caused 10 deaths as it ripped through mountain communities and forced thousands of people to investigate. They said that fire has been propelled by winds as strong as 45 miles per hour. And speaking of the climate, getting off these fires for a minute.
This is literal hell on earth.
Was it Utah or Idaho? It was somewhere close out there that they recorded, the National Weather Service recorded the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane wind speed, 117 miles per hour.
Oh my gosh.
In Idaho.
That is like a Tornado Valley area, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I feel like
that's unprecedented. That's never happened before.
That's crazy high. But yeah, I think it's the lack of trees. We're going to get the highest there probably for the lack of trees and flat land and all that stuff going on.
Yeah. So this is just, it is, like you said, it's hell on earth.
And it's just getting worse. There's nothing, we can't protect ourselves from the forces of nature when they're this massive.
No.
This is the 6th mass extinction, and it's exponentially speeding up.
And these fires are too. Have you seen the video that has come out of it? The sky is just orange.
They're already running out of groundwater over there. When you've got massive fires like that, you're just drying up anything they had left. So,
and we had talked before we started recording about these fires, and you said that California
yes.
uses prisoners to fight these fires while they're having a shortage. Why? Because coronavirus.
Yeah. And at some point, they're going to refuse. Mm-hmm. They're going to just refuse. I mean...
So what do? You can't wait for the weather because it's not changing.
This is the beginning. This is so early in the season to have it be this bad. I can't even imagine. And I expect it to be followed up by a devastating winter for the Midwest and the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So I don't...
Yeah. And the thing with California is they've had more fires every year. It grows exponentially every year. Mm-hmm. They have more fires than they did the year before. They had more fires than the year before that. The seasons grow longer. There's more days of fire. Which
means we have less days of sunshine because this haze eventually drifts over us. And this is where last year, I believe, we lost like 2 months or something. I mean, it was like 22 days we went straight without any sunshine. Mm-hmm. More than that, probably. But that was where I remember seeing them talk about it. Was it 21 or 22 days in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and again, it's not just the West Coast that's on fire.
Right.
There's fires in Brazil. Those fires have been intentionally set because they're burning the Amazon so that the farmers can put farms in there.
Use the land.
You know, there's fires across Australia, New Zealand. There are fires all across Asia. The maps are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
These fires that are raging out of control all around the world. And... You know, we keep...
The fires themselves contribute to more extreme climate change. So that, yeah. I don't know what the plan is here, folks, but we should probably come up with something quick.
Well, I guess the first start of the plan should be people need to quit having babies.
Yeah, I mean...
Quite honestly, we're the biggest contributors to climate change, period. Because we need all these resources, and the more people you have, the more resources that need to be obtained to
We're a
secure
culture
life.
of excess, so here you need way more than normal amount of resources.
Oh God, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, but we don't need anything like high-speed rail service. We don't need any.
No, we don't need health care.
We don't need health care. We don't need Social Security. Yeah. And the Trump supporters believe all this. It's nuts. They're nuts to begin with. I don't care. I don't care how many listeners I lose when I say that, because I know there are still a handful of conservatives that still listen to this show. I don't know why you do, because I hate your guts. No, seriously.
He really does.
I really do. So now I want to move on to this story. Speaking of Trump supporters. So, Bob Woodward has a new book that's coming out called Rage. And in his book, he interviewed Donald Trump, and he has it on tape. They've played excerpts of this. Trump admitted that he's been lying to the American people about the severity of the coronavirus. His excuse? I don't want to cause panic.
I need to portray strong leadership.
Yeah. With over 190,000 Americans dead from this virus. And there's still people that support this orange fascist pig.
Well, I mean, those were probably just the losers and the suckers, Darren.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to see the real losers and suckers, go watch a Trump rally. Yeah. Just like the one that occurred Thursday evening over in Saginaw, Michigan. There's not a single mass to be found whatsoever.
Not a single brainwave either.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing. Like these people, I keep wondering how they're going to justify his next move, right? And everybody keeps asking that. They're like, how are they going to justify this one? Because it's all so insane. But here's the thing, like they can justify anything. Because I was telling Darren, we were chatting before the show about this too, and I said, I don't understand it. I don't understand how they can always come up with, a justification. But then yesterday I saw a lady who had been diehard Trump has managed to justify, come up with some stupid excuse for everything he does. And she's got a meme that says, we're not really voting for Trump. It's not about the one man. It's about the principles.
No, it's about the one man, and it's Obama. They hate Obama, so they're going to vote for anything that's anti-Obama, and
Yeah.
that's Trump.
And that's what it comes down to. It's not about the principles. And if it is about the principles, it's about the outright, just say it, racism.
Bingo.
You don't give a shit if it's Trump. You don't give a shit if it's George W. Bush. It can be any racist. Any racist at all work for you guys. Just say it.
David Duke.
You want to act like you're brave, just be honest about what you are. You're racist. You don't like people that don't look like you. And why? Because you're scared. Because you're insecure. Because you don't think that your member's big enough or your ego's too big. I don't know, but
Yeah,
there's no room for you here.
exactly. Well, I've got this story. This is written by Mia Jankowicz, writing for Business Insider. Folks, this is not a liberal rag. This is Business Insider. They're very conservative. Carl Bernstein, the veteran journalist best known for his reporting on the Watergate scandal with Bob Woodward, has said that his former colleagues' tapes of Donald Trump admitting to downplaying COVID-19 have a graver impact than Watergate. This is Carl Bernstein saying this. One of the two guys that brought down Nixon. Hard. You folks need to watch All the President's Men. Great movie.
In a normal world with normal principled values based on human decency and human rights, this would have made a splash bigger than Watergate. The problem is we're not in that world anymore, folks. So dial it back, find a way to get us back there, because this can't be normalized.
No. And let me just go on an aside here, because all of these Republicans, Republitards, whatever you want to call them, they're all, well, anything that's based on unnamed witnesses, unnamed sources, that's just a bunch of bullshit. No. Tell you what, go back once again and you take a look at the history of Watergate. Nixon would
Deep
not
throat.
have resigned
Deep
had
throat.
it not been for unnamed sources. Unnamed sources are a vital component to actual journalism. I'll tell you what, I'll say something I've said before on this show. You want to know what you call a journalist who gives up his sources? Unemployed.
Oh, forever.
Bingo. Right there it
Principled,
is.
unemployed, unrespected. There's a lot of words for that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. These are QAnon people. You know what I mean? You're talking about Trump supporters.
Oh, God.
So they don't even... The
QAnon.
definition of the word source, they don't know what that is. They don't get it. But fake news is anything they don't want to believe.
Yeah. QAnon basically is a Nazi cult. I'll just call it like it is, folks.
But it's almost worse because the Nazis actually... they had, like, real racist principles, and this QAnon just has made-believe fantasy stories that are like...
Yeah, exactly.
You can't really wrap your head around it.
If we get time, we'll get to some QAnon stuff here. But continuing again, this is Business Insider. Woodward and Bernstein reported on the series of events in the early 1970s known collectively as the Watergate scandal that eventually led to Richard Nixon's resignation. Now, following recordings made by Woodward for his new book on Trump called Rage, Bernstein has said the implications are even graver than in Watergate. Woodward on Wednesday released a series of recordings of his on-the-record conversations with Trump, which include these. One on February 7th, in which Trump said that he was aware that the novel coronavirus was deadlier than severe flus. One on March 19th, in which Trump said, quote, I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down because I don't want to create a panic. End of quote. And by the way, there's a link in the story of Business Insider where you can hear the recordings in case you have your Trump-loving uncle or your neighbor that believes it's fake news. In a Wednesday interview with CNN, Bernstein said the tapes were, quote, even more devastating than Nixon's tapes, end of quote, referring to audio recordings of conversations in which Nixon and other White House officials discussed covering up the break-in at the Democratic National Committee's offices in the Watergate complex. Bernstein added, quote, we are listening to the President of the United States on tape deliberately undermining the national security of the United States, the health and well-being of the people of the United States. And he's doing this knowingly in real time. It is the smoking gun of his negligence. End of quote. That's a powerful sentence. It is the smoking gun of his negligence.
It's powerful to us, but I mean, keep in mind, his fans love smoking guns.
You mean the losers and the suckers?
Exactly. Anybody that believes him, you know he looks at as a loser and a sucker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm surprised he hasn't told them to their face yet.
He probably has.
Yeah, and they still love him because he just tells the truth. He tells it like it is.
They're licking boots. That's who we're dealing with.
They're licking more than boots. Bernstein also suggested that Trump had sacrificed thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans for, quote, his own narrow presidential re-election efforts, end of quote.
He's then thrown a party and celebrated it in front of him.
Yeah, and you heard Trump's own sister. Donald's in this for himself,
and
period.
they're toasting to giving up everything they've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers.
Yep, and yet they say, oh, Obama's taking our freedoms away. If you elect Democrats, they're going to take away your guns and your freedom.
Yep.
Bernstein called it a, quote, kind of homicidal negligence, end of quote. He added this sentence, quote, this is one of the greatest presidential felonies of all time, maybe the greatest, end of quote.
The greatest we've seen. We know there's 5 more we haven't found yet.
Mm-hmm. So now what's going to happen? I'll tell you what should happen. There should be millions of people in the streets demanding prosecution of Trump, demanding more impeachment hearings. Time to get rid of him, folks.
But we've been saying that since he started, you know? And then we're looking at what? I mean, with Watergate, we ended up with Ford. We're ended up with Pence if they do that now.
Well, speaking of, I'm glad you mentioned that. Did you see Michael Cohen in an interview earlier this week said basically if Trump loses the election, what he'll do is before January 20th, Trump will resign to elevate Pence as president, and Pence will pardon Trump for all crimes.
Oh, I can see that. 100%.
Yep.
Here's the thing, though. The powers that be, let's be honest, and I've said it from the beginning, and this is not a reflection of how I'm going to vote because I've already told my friends I'm going to have to check the... I can't even make the pukey noise myself. I can't even say it. But yeah, I'm going to check that box, against the Nazi.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the powers that be give too much of a which one of them ends up getting elected because they're both going to work for them.
Exactly. And that's pretty much how it works. But I tell you what, I'll go for the fascism that's creeping slower than the fascism that's running at 100 miles an hour unchecked with no brakes.
And if you're looking at the money, if you're following any of the things that really show somebody's agenda, you understand how much this man worships fascism, how much he really just respects it and lives to be one of them. So that's not scary, man. I can't help you.
Yeah. This is all scary. It should be. If you have a pulse, if you have brain waves going, this should all be
any knowledge of history.
petrifying to you. Speaking of, you want some more Donald Trump cover-up stuff here?
Lay it on me, Darren.
Well, I've got this story. This is Julia Ainsley writing for NBC News. This is dated September 10th. A new whistleblower complaint alleges that in late 2018 and early 2019, former senior officials at the Department of Homeland Security sought to inflate the publicly reported number of known or suspected terrorists crossing the border in a move to increase support for a border wall. In early 2019, a DHS spokeswoman pushed NBC News to retract an article based on accurate figures the agency had disclosed in a document to Congress in the months prior that were far lower than the nearly 4,000 in a year the administration had been citing publicly. The January 2019 NBC News article reported that, contrary to those public statements by Trump administration officials, you know how many known or suspected terrorists had been encountered at the southern border in the first half of fiscal year 2018?
How many?
Well, the Trump claimed 4,000. You know how many it was?
No.
6.
6. Yeah, it's real hard to justify, locking up and ripping apart, tens of thousands of families and children over a year, over a couple of years, when there are 6 suspected terrorists.
Exactly.
Like, all of the trillions were given to our military and our Customs and Border Patrol to stop those 6 people? Really?
Yeah. At the time, administration officials were repeating the 4,000 figure in an effort to justify the government shutdown over Trump's border wall, and the lower, more accurate figure undercut their argument. That 2019 NBC News article was based on non-publicized figures provided by Customs and Border Protection to Congress in May 2018.
This is not about the border, folks. It's about you. They're going to spend your money arresting you. And when you're in prison, just like, you let everybody else go to prison and didn't say anything, there's not anybody else to help you. So.
Before publication, then DHS spokeswoman Katie Waldman told NBC News that publishing the figures would put border agents in harm's way.
Because that's what they're there for, to protect border agents, not you.
At the time, NBC News consulted former DHS officials who were adamant this was not the case.
Of course. Why would they tell us?
So now a little bit about Katie Waldman, who, again, at the time was the DHS spokeswoman.
Oh, okay.
You know where she's at now? She's now the press secretary for Mike Pence.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know who her husband is?
I don't think I want to.
Stephen Miller, White House advisor, known as the architect of the administration's anti-immigration policies.
Known as King Racist himself. The last person we want making any policies.
Yep. After publication, Waldman told NBC News that the figures provided to Congress and reported by NBC News were inaccurate and pushed for a full retraction, saying that otherwise she would put out a statement from DHS discrediting the article.
These are baby snatchers, you guys. This is why they're doing this. They've been doing this since 2018 with Betsy DeVos, with, sorry, I forgot the other, Rex Tillerson. There's several of them involved in Alex
whole
Azar.
Bunch of them.
Alex Azar. These are some of the most disgusting, slimiest people to have ever existed. And the only reason they aren't serving life sentences is because they have so much damn money, you guys. They're stealing babies and selling them.
Waldman said DHS had different correct figures, but the agency had no plans to provide them to Congress.
Why would they do that?
Yeah, because they didn't exist. That's why. NBC News did not retract the article, and DHS never published a statement discrediting it. According to congressional sources, CBP never revised the figures.
Genocide.
Waldman, now Miller, declined to provide an on-the-record comment to NBC News for this article about her handling of the 2019 NBC News report. DHS did not immediately respond to a request for comment. On January 4, 2019, 3 days before NBC News published its report, the White House prepared a briefing sheet that said 3,755 known or suspected terrorists were stopped from entering the United States in fiscal year 2017. From the White House driveway that day, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was then White House press secretary, told reporters that CBP had picked up nearly 4,000 known or suspected terrorists in the last year that, quote, came across our southern border, end of quote. DHS circulated the sheet to reporters as part of its own briefing with reporters. The sheet did not specify where the terrorists were stopped, and according to the whistleblower complaint, the figure conflated known or suspected terrorists with special interest aliens.
So that means even the U.S. veteran that they arrested and attempted to deport, the one that was born here, was probably a part of those numbers.
2 days later, Sanders walked back her statement and said she did not know how many came from airports versus crossing land borders. The next day, January 7th, NBC News published its article saying only 6 known or suspected terrorists had been intercepted at the southern border during the first half of fiscal 2018. Brian Murphy, a former intelligence official at DHS, alleged in his whistleblower complaint that he was removed from a March 5th, 2019 meeting after showing then-Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen that the 3,755 figure referred to special interest aliens, which are designated as such simply for their country of origin,
Kirsten.
there
was another racist lady, I
known
forgot.
ties to terrorism.
You can't make this stuff up.
Murphy alleges he was attempting to correct Nielsen after she told Congress in a December 20th, 2018 hearing that 3,755 individuals known or suspected terrorists entered the country rather than special interest aliens. Nielsen's attorney, James Wareham, said that Murphy's claim on this point is false. He points to the transcript of the December 2018 testimony, which shows that Nielsen does, in fact, differentiate between the two categories, contrary to what the whistleblower said. According to the transcript, in her exchange with Representative Darrell Issa, Republican of California, Nielsen said this, quote, "What I can tell you is we stopped 3,000 special interest aliens at the border last year. We stopped 10 known and suspected terrorists from attempting to travel to the United States each year," end of quote. So her attorney issued this statement to NBC News, quote, "Mr. Murphy's allegations about Secretary Nielsen's testimony are demonstrably false. She never represented that thousands of known or suspected terrorists crossed the southern border. His attorney is aware of this, and I expect him to correct it immediately," end of quote.
Okay, so I have to bring this up. I bring this up every time we discuss the southern border and the terrorism and how they're keeping America safe by hitting that southern border. If you go back to 2018 and you look at the School Safety Commission that Betsy DeVos formed, it was supposedly in response to school shootings, but actually had a member from every one of the major agencies that ended up putting together the plan for the southern border. This was right before they started taking kids. And they held meetings all across the nation and in all of the states where they basically awarded most of the private contracts. If you go back and look at that, the timeline makes it really hard. And the fact that every article they publish discusses that they never actually mentioned school safety, school shootings, gun regulations, anything. They never discussed any of that in any of those meetings. And right after is when they really were completely organized to start separating families at the border. So, and these are the same people that were covering up this data. So to me, it's very clear what was happening.
Yeah. But it's disgusting that a sitting spokeswoman for DHS is threatening NBC News, retract the story. That's an attack on the Fourth of the State. That's an attack on the First Amendment.
Yes.
Period.
They've attacked every human right and every constitutional right we have.
And here's another attack on the First Amendment. This is James Crowley writing for Newsweek. Again, not a liberal rag. This is Newsweek. Pentagon officials have ordered the independent military newspaper Stars and Stripes to stop publishing by the end of September, as Donald Trump's popularity with the troops has seen a decline. While the order calls for publication to cease by the end of this month, it gives the actual organization behind Stars and Stripes a little more time to dissolve itself until the end of January 2021. As noted by the Associated Press, this news comes after a Pentagon effort earlier this year to save the $15.5 million that's budgeted toward the newspaper. The House of Representatives passed a budget that would allow funding for Stars and Stripes, but the Senate has yet to sign off on a new bill to fund the Defense Department. Once again,
wait
Mitch
a minute,
McConnell.
They're holding back funding for something for the Defense Department? Just the media.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing they would cut spending for. That and like diversity training, I'm sure.
Yep. Senators from both major political parties opposed the decision to cut funding for the paper, the name of which dates back to the Civil War. A letter signed by 15 senators to Defense Secretary Mark Esper read this way, quote, "Stars and Stripes is an essential part of our nation's freedom of the press that serves the very population charged with defending that freedom," end of quote. In a statement, Stars and Stripes Ombudsman Ernie Grant said the Department of Defense was making a major mistake in ceasing funding for the paper. So, yeah, this is not going well. Like I said, Congress members from both sides are pissed about this.
This is interesting. I keep thinking about the fact that while we have seen these moments in history, right? We've seen fascism rise. We've seen militaries' powers grow. I don't know that we've ever seen it in a climate like this, in a diverse country like this. Like, we have so much diversity right now that the level of racism that they're trying to push and the way they're trying to quelch this, they're going to have real problems in the military and in the police departments with the fact that they've got black and brown men and women serving together.
Mm-hmm.
So to use those agencies against one category of those people, I mean, ultimately, I don't think you're going to be able to just get rid of a newspaper and quelch the dissent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm skipping down a little bit further into the article. Some people suggested that Trump's apparent declining popularity with the Army may have played a part in the decision to shutter the paper. According to a new Military Times poll, Trump is losing support among those serving in the military. The August poll found that 41.3% of troops said they would vote for Vice President Joe Biden in the upcoming election, compared to 37.4% who said they were voting for Trump. Here's a ray of sunshine. 12.8% said they're voting third party.
Wow. 12.8% of the military, but I would guess a lot of those are libertarians.
Probably. I don't see any votes for the Green Party coming out of the military.
I don't either.
The poll also found that 42% of those surveyed had a very unfavorable view of Trump, 7.9% unfavorable. So nearly 50% either very unfavorable or unfavorable. Only 37.8% of those surveyed had either a favorable or very favorable view of him, 12.3% neutral. According to the Military Times, this marks a serious decline compared to the start of Trump's presidency, when at least 46% of troops viewed him favorably.
But just to be clear, he's still winning, right? Because he thinks 100% of them are losers and suckers.
Yeah, exactly. Stars and Stripes was originally founded in 1861. It has been in print continuously since World War II. So they are part of the Department of Defense. That's where they get their funding, but they are governed with editorial independence.
Oh, that's not allowed here.
Yeah. According to Stars and Stripes website, more than 7 million copies of the paper's U.S. weekly edition were distributed in 2019. Over 4 million special editions of the paper were printed and distributed in the States and overseas that same year. Their website had 38 million page views last year.
Yeah, he's trying to eliminate the free press. It's happening quickly.
Yep. This is an attack on the First Amendment, folks. Plain and simple. There's no arguing it. It is what it is. And I want to get to this story because I know you wanted to talk about it for a couple minutes. This is by Kathleen McGrory and Neil Betty, writing for the Tampa Bay Times. Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nacco took office in 2011 with a bold plan to create a cutting-edge intelligence program that could stop crime before it happened. Now let's just think about that for a minute.
Yeah, if it hasn't happened, there was no crime.
Exactly. So they're trying to become the thought police is what it is.
Yeah, well, they're creating the criminals. They're just deciding who they're going to make a criminal.
Mm-hmm. Because they push them into it.
Mm-hmm.
What he actually built was a system to continuously monitor and harass Pasco County residents. That is according to a Tampa Bay Times investigation. First, the sheriff's office generates lists of people it considers likely to break the law based on arrest histories, unspecified intelligence, and arbitrary decisions by police analysts. Then it sends deputies to find and interrogate anyone whose name appears, often without probable cause, a search warrant, or evidence of a specific crime. They swarm homes in the middle of the night, waking families and embarrassing people in front of their neighbors. They write tickets for missing mailbox numbers and overgrown grass, saddling residents with court dates and fines. They come again and again, making arrests for any reason they can. One former deputy described the directive like this, quote, "Make their lives miserable until they move or sue," end of quote. In just 5 years, Nacco's signature program has ensnared almost 1,000 people, 1 in 10 of whom were younger than the age of 18. Again, according to the Tampa Bay Times investigation.
Children. 10% of them were children. They just decided to harass and make criminals.
Mm-hmm. This is disgusting.
I'm pissed.
Mm-hmm. Everybody should be. Here's this.
It's not just how they're searching for criminals. This is how they're gentrifying neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They identify homes they want, and there is a cop to realtor pipeline Okay, they've got friends that are realtors. All they have to do is give enough city ordinance violations to somebody for their grass being too long, or their fence being wrong, or their garage door being not painted. Enough of those, and they can just come take your house. So, I mean, that's what they're doing now. They're like, okay, not only do we get to pick which homes and properties that we get to just take and keep for ourselves, but we get to decide what children we're going to snatch off the street and throw in prison to someday fight California fires, or, whatever else they want to use our prisoners for. It's human, slavery, first of all, but it's grotesque. There's no words for, ugh.
Yeah. I'm going to skip down further in the article, but they do give specific examples of the harassment. In the past 2 years alone, 2 of the nation's largest law enforcement agencies have scrapped similar programs following public outcries and reports documenting serious flaws. In Pasco County, however, the initiative has expanded. Last summer, the sheriff's office announced plans to begin keeping tabs on people who have been repeatedly committed to psychiatric hospitals.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, let's just go after vulnerable people.
This pisses me off so much, Darren. I would have, if there were an algorithm deciding who had, the most chance of being a criminal, I totally would have been on that algorithm. I had all of the, all of the signs, I guess, coming from a bad family and having parents die young and substance abuse in your family, all of those things. Mm-hmm. They could have easily labeled me and imprisoned me. It's so disgusting.
Let me skip down a little bit further. The sheriff's office said its program was designed to reduce bias in policing by using objective data, and it provided statistics showing a decline in burglaries, larcenies, and auto theft since the program began in 2011. But Pasco's drop in property crimes was similar to the decline in the 7 largest nearby police jurisdictions. Over the same time period, violent crime increased only in Pasco County. So, yeah.
They said that's pretty sad when they control those numbers and have discretion to charge people for what they want.
Their program was designed to reduce bias. No, it wasn't.
It's designed to increase violence. That's every police officer program.
And is to increase bias as well. Yeah. Sorry, it is.
Violence, bias, all of that. It's a power structure of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. It certainly is. We're out of time for this week, but folks, you really want to take a look at this article. Again, it's the Tampa Bay Times. We have a link to the article posted on our official Facebook page. So if you go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show, we'll have a link to that story right there. And that's going to wrap things up for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
For Jack Prince and for Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment. And please support the Fourth Estate.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.